feels good to be back behind the microphone in the evening for Beyond Reason Radio from 8 to 10 p.m. We didn't get to do it last week because I was hosting the morning show with Mr. Tom Benson, who is producing tonight. And but we're back tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow night as well for your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. And we have a lot to talk about. No doubt we won't get it all on the show. There's no way. And then we have Mr. Tom Benson, who is producing. How are you, Tom?
We have a lot to talk about. What's going on?
Nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing. I mean, this whole year, there just hasn't been any news at all. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Just the whole year?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, every 36 to 48 hours, there's a whole new news cycle.
Yeah.
You can't keep up with it.
That is the truth. People don't know the struggle, Tom Benson, of people like us in media who have to try to keep up with all of this. So, yeah, but we're going to talk about a lot of different things. The first thing I want to talk about is the big story of the day, the big story of the week, which is this whole stuff about Harvey Weinstein. Now, this is proof that I'm really just a nobody because I really didn't know much about this guy before all this broke.
And you're a movie buff.
Yeah, I love movies. I knew of the Weinstein Company.
Mm-hmm.
You see that credit a lot when you see movies. You see Weinstein Company or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty familiar with a lot of directors. He's more on the producer side.
Yeah.
But I was not as familiar with him. I'd heard the name. That's about it. I didn't know he was a big Democrat donor, but, I mean, it's Hollywood. They usually are.
Surprise, surprise.
But I didn't know how, if you're not in the business, I guess, there's really no reason for you to know everything about him.
Right.
People in the business, people in Hollywood, and I guess people who are running for political office knew him because he had a lot of money.
They want his money, honey.
Yeah. But I honestly did not know a lot about the guy until this came out. But this has all come out, and sexual assault allegations, obviously. Rape allegations have come out. And a lot of other stuff that is, just beyond reason. Actually, we have a report here from Fox News that goes over some of the latest with this. Go ahead and play the audio of the Fox News report on the latest dealing with Harvey Weinstein.
An audio tape obtained by the New Yorker magazine alleges Harvey Weinstein made promises he didn't keep.
I'm not going to do anything I swear on my children.
The NYPD said in a statement the tape verifies the basis for the victim's complaint. Actresses established and not are speaking, saying Weinstein tried to or in some cases did rape them. A Weinstein spokesperson denies it. Angelina Jolie says the mogul's reputation prevented her from working with him and being exposed to such propositioning.
5 minutes. Don't ruin your friendship with me for 5 minutes.
Hillary Clinton condemned the actions by a donor to her campaign. People magazine now reports Weinstein's wife says she's leaving him. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
So his wife's leaving him. Now Hillary Clinton comes out and condemns. Obama condemns.
The wife just wants some money before he loses it all.
Well, yeah, that's true. They're afraid he's going to pull a Roman Polanski. And,
Well, supposedly he's
disappear.
He's in another country seeking help with his addiction problem.
Yes, I'm sure he is.
And on the side, he's going to help OJ find the real killer.
Oh, yeah. And then blast the NRA. Wasn't that something else he wanted to do?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. First off, with all of these accusations coming out, there's a model and now actress Cara Delevingne who came out and said that he tried to, sexually assault her. You have Glenn Close who came out and said she heard rumors for years and feels bad she didn't say anything. Ashley Judd, where a lot of this started. More and more people keep coming out and admitting that this is happening and that this happened. And I read all this, and I'm thinking there is no possible way. There is no way that this wasn't known.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way that a lot of these people in Hollywood and in the media and in politics, frankly, didn't know about this. I mean, I can understand, in some cases you really don't know. For instance, I had a guy in my church who ended up being arrested for child porn. Nobody knew. No one had any idea. He hid it very well. But that was something he did in private, alone when nobody was looking, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is different. This is countless people bringing this up. And they knew. And the stories have been going around for a while. And, of course, a lot of these media outlets decided to kill the stories, which we're going to get into that in a little bit. But the thing that's really kind of amazing to me, at first I didn't understand it, but I guess I do now. I've noticed how all of a sudden this has become a political story. Has anyone else noticed that? All of a sudden we have politicized this. When I first heard this story and I first read about it and everything, I really didn't think about it from a political aspect. I didn't think about it in a right-left kind of argument aspect. But I've noticed that, the right media, conservative media has really been on this story a lot, really been doing this. And they've been saying things like, this shows what the left is really like, or this shows what the left actually puts up with, and this shows how hypocritical the left is. And there's actually some truth to that. There's actually a lot of truth to that. I mean, you look at Bill Clinton, for instance, and people love Bill Clinton now. You can't, you have to admit that. But the other reason the conservative media is doing this is because they had their own problem. They had the problem with Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly and Eric Bolling. And with those problems, this is that instance where people on the right now are saying, aha, the left does it too. And the left is even worse at it. And I just find it fascinating. It's the whole reaction. This is what we do now. We just fight the other side. It's the reaction of, well, the left is just as bad. They do it too. Their side's bad. Their side's worse. I have a feeling that there are people on both sides who really have a problem with this, and it's not good. So, but I just found it fascinating how all of a sudden this has become politicized, and it was not something I thought about. So the conservative media has definitely been politicizing this. They have been saying this shows how the left really is. But of course, the left side of the aisle, the leftist media, a lot of the mainstream media, they're politicizing this as well. And of course, we have to bring Donald Trump into this. What does Donald Trump have to do with this story? Well, I mean, really nothing, of course. Donald Trump doesn't have anything to do with this story. But it's amazing to me how you have a story about a guy in Hollywood who was sexually assaulting people, using his power, abusing his power to get away with things he should not have been getting away with, disgusting things. And then he finally comes out. He's finally getting caught. It shows how real of a problem it is. And what is the media doing? They're bringing Trump into this. I mean, the conservative media is bringing Obama and Hillary into this, but then you have the left media. All of a sudden, this is about Trump. No, this is not about Trump. It's like this article from CNN. Here it is by Z. Byron Wolf. Here's the headline. Sexual misconduct allegations now cost powerful men their jobs, but not the White House. We had to bring Trump into this. Now, Trump had that video that came out, the Access Hollywood thing, which I really criticized. If you remember, I was hosting the morning show, filling in when all that happened, and I said, Christians should not be defending this at all. This is bad. And I got blasted for it by a lot of the listeners for criticizing Trump on that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't think there's anything out there, at least not yet, that proves that Trump did anything even close to what Harvey Weinstein did. But I find
many times over.
Yeah. I mean, for years and years, and people were hiding and all that stuff.
Decades.
Yeah. So, but I just find it fascinating that here you have a story, and the focus of the story really should be one, which we're going to get into in a minute, how powerful figures in the media and in politics use their power to hide stuff, which really ruins the credibility of a lot of journalists. And then the other story really is how women in the workplace have had to deal with this for far too long from men like this who abuse their power to sexually assault women. That's the real story here. Those are the real things we should be focusing on here. This is actually a story that both sides should be uniting on, to be against those things. It's an opportunity to unite the country. Yet the first thing I see, and this is the world we live in, and I get it to a certain extent because both sides do this. When Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes were accused of things, the left used that to paint all of Fox News and all of the listeners of Fox News and all of conservative media as just like them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it now that the conservative side is doing the same thing to Hollywood. This is how Hollywood, all of Hollywood is. This is how the left really is. But that's not really the story here. All of that is really a distraction. The real story, for one, how this was covered up. But also, just the fact that this went on too long. So I have a call here. Very nervous to take, but I'll take it anyway before we take a break. Bob in Longwood, what do you think about all this?
Well, many years ago when I was young, I had a job. I was a working foreman. I was, my 20s. And I had about 5 or 6 women under me. And when I used to go in the morning, I had women many a times had stopped me. And, they would show their heads through the door, and they would, in the locker room, and they stopped me and they would say, and I would say, what do you want? And they would open up the door, have their back towards me, can you fix my bra strap? And I said,
what?
No, the bra strap.
Well, I heard what you said. I'm just kind of in disbelief. But go ahead.
But this is the truth. And what I'm saying to you, there was other incidents, too, because women try to get ahead, too. Just like men do and whatever, but women try to get ahead, and they'll do anything, and actually they'll do things in the workplace that you wouldn't even believe. But the only thing, now, Hillary Clinton, I think, got a new book out, and Bill will be gone for about 6 or 7 months. You watch, because his name's going to be brought up a lot, too.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your call. He talks about how this happens in the workplace on both sides. I mean, we made this into a left-right problem, but this is really a human problem. It's been a human problem, since for the history of civilization, this struggle between men who abuse women and women who use their sexuality to get ahead. It happens. That being said, I've never seen it in my experience in the workplace. Maybe it's just because I'm younger and it's not as prevalent now as it used to be. Maybe it's just I'm naive to it. Maybe it's just I'm ugly, and I mean, nobody would pay attention to me that way anyway. But I've never seen this in the workplace. I've never seen men abuse their power in this way. I don't know. I mean, I've only had like 4 jobs in my lifetime, so maybe that's it. I'm not as high up, but like here I've never seen it here.
I think years ago, a lot of women went along to get along in her job.
Yeah.
I think now other women are more vocal and stand up for their rights and are a little bit more assertive. And I think that's why you hear more of it happening today. Now, I had an incident happen to me 15 years ago. Christmas time, the gal at the front desk came back with some mistletoe to my office and wanted a little holiday cheer, so to speak. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but that's not appropriate. And she called me a stick in the mud.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's kind of a different angle to this I hadn't really thought of, how, if it happens the other way, you can't really, nobody ever mentions that part of it. But
it fed my ego, though, for the rest of the day.
Maybe that's why. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I mean, the main point is this is a human problem. It happens in all workplaces, right or left. And it's something that it's good that our society is dealing with it and getting rid of it. That's a good thing that's happening in today's world. But it's fascinating to see how everyone's politicized this. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight. If you're listening to the live show here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. You can also like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and see the live video of the show there as well. And follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. So we've been talking about the Harvey Weinstein situation. It's been the big story of the day everywhere. And one of the most troubling aspects of this, in my opinion, more than anything else, I mean, obviously what he did is really the most troubling aspect when you hear the details of what he did. But the other most troubling aspect is the fact that this was covered up for so long, because it has become increasingly obvious that this was known, and it was known by a lot of people, and it's been known for a long time. So people had to have been pushing this under the rug for a long time because of who he was, because of how much money he was donating to political campaigns, obviously, because who he was in media circles. And this became apparent as well with more details we're finding out about the journalist who really broke this story in the New Yorker. His name's Ronan Farrow. Ronan Farrow, he's an NBC correspondent. He couldn't get NBC to run with this story. For a long time, he tried to get NBC to run with this story. And he was freelance NBC News correspondent, and they wouldn't do it. So he went to the New Yorker. In fact, he talked about this. He was on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow this week, and he talked about this and how he says there's really no reason why NBC should not have run with this story. Here's the audio of that.
Why did you end up reporting this story for the New Yorker and not for NBC News?
Look, you would have to ask NBC and NBC executives about the details of that story. I'm not going to comment on any news organization's story that they, did or didn't run. I will say that over many years, many news organizations have circled this story and faced a great deal of pressure in doing so. And there are now reports emerging publicly about the kinds of pressure that news organizations face in this. And that is real. In the course of this reporting, I was threatened with a lawsuit personally by Mr. Weinstein. And, we've already seen that the Times has been publicly threatened with a suit. I don't want to describe any suits leveled at other organizations that I work with, but certainly this is a considerable amount of pressure that outlets get as well.
And NBC says that, the story wasn't publishable, that it wasn't ready to go by the time that you brought it to them. But obviously it's ready to go by the time you got it into the New Yorker.
I walked into the door at the New Yorker with an explosively reportable piece that should have been public earlier, and immediately, obviously, the New Yorker recognized that, and it is not accurate to say that it was not reportable. In fact, there were multiple determinations that it was reportable at NBC.
So when you hear that, you have to know that there was pressure being put on NBC not to run that story. And they probably knew there was a lot of truth to it, but they decided not to run it. That's really the troubling aspect. Now I'm in media. There's always pressure, especially from advertisers, not to talk about things, to be honest. But I've never had that kind of pressure for a story like this. Luckily, I seem to have a lot more leeway. And maybe it's because radio, I don't have that problem here where management says, oh, we're not going to run with a story like that. It just doesn't happen. I'm very lucky in that regard. But it's troubling. And it's because of Weinstein's connections. And it's also because of something I've talked about on the show before. I read a book recently by Cheryl Atkinson, who is a former CBS reporter. She now does her own thing. She had a book on that as well. Her new book is called Smear. And I talked about the smear industrial complex that she basically talks about in her book, that how when you try to come out with stuff that certain groups or certain politicians or political parties or political news organizations or private companies or whatever, when you come out with stories and try to report on them and try to tell the truth on those things that those powerful organizations in government and in the private sector disagree with, they will put a ton of pressure on you and they will smear you to shut you up. They don't want the truth out there in a lot of cases.
You know who Ronan Farrow is, don't you? He's a son of actress Mia Farrow, well, one-time actress, and Woody Allen.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's probably how he knew.
And I tell you what.
That's probably how all this started. He probably knew a lot of it from them.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of baggage in that family, too.
Yeah, to say the least. So Cheryl Atkinson has a piece in The Hill today, which is very interesting about all this. She says, here's the headline. It says, Weinstein's allegations are not the first stories spiked by the media. She says here, many people seem shocked by claims from a former New York Times reporter who says the newspaper sat on her 2004 information exposing alleged sexual misconduct by Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. The Weinstein question aside, I can tell you, this is Cheryl Atkinson here, I can tell you that every day in newsrooms around the country, stories are killed because powerful people know how to get them killed. She says recently a former managing editor of Time magazine said that the only bias reporters have is their bias to get a great story on the front page. That may be true of good journalists, and there are many, but good journalists' intentions are impacted by managers and editors with authority to shape and censor, by managers and editors who are lobbied, enticed, pushed, pressed, cajoled, and threatened by PR companies, crisis management specialists, global law firms, super PACs, advertisers, nonprofits, business interests, political figures, famous people, important people, wealthy people, and their own corporate bosses. Exactly what I talked about, what she talks about in her book Smear, which I would definitely recommend to anyone. She says an entire industry has been built around companies and operatives that work to get stories placed, discredited, or wiped. Discredited, I think, is what happens the most. They obfuscate, confuse, and attack. Their targets include ideas they oppose, whistleblowers and advocates who are exposing the truth, journalists uncovering the facts, and news outlets publishing the stories. They deploy every tool imaginable: fake social media accounts, letters to the editors and editorials, journalists, nuisance lawsuits, bloggers, nonprofits, online comments, and it goes on and on and on. She says, in my 2 decades as a reporter for CBS News, my stories were often on the receiving end of these efforts. The pharmaceutical industry is probably the most aggressive and persuasive, considering how much media advertising it buys and yada, yada, yada. She says, I've written about one of my best CBS executive producers who recounted getting harassed by the network's sales department. She continues on later. She says, over the years, managers asked me to soften or remove information from stories or held stories related to the NFL, the American Red Cross, Ford Motor Company, People to People, Feed the Children, the government, a college football player, Goldman Sachs, and Boeing, just to name a few. It says that CBS News, it became routine for my stories to be met with organized resistance when the White House felt those were contrary to its interests. One White House operative, and this was when Obama was in office, might contact a CBS manager in New York. Pretty soon, we might be fielding calls to our Washington office from political figures. Another White House flack might call my bureau chief after hours. All would use similar phraseology and talking points. And it says, what was his complaint this time? They would say, and all this stuff. But she makes the point, and this goes beyond private companies. It's also powerful people in government, powerful nonprofit political organizations. And this is a real problem. And this is actually, to me, the bigger story here. Not so much all the politicization of it, but the fact that the truth is being held sometimes in these media outlets, and it's done by powerful people who smear and scare you into submission. And it's a troubling aspect, especially when you have something as terrible as this and what this guy was doing and has been known for years, was able to get away with it for so long. the good news is the internet has helped us go around this stuff. But I thought I would just share that with you, because to me that's the bigger story, and it creates a lot of problems. This is why we have this divide here, because this is what's been happening in media. The good news as well is I'm a nobody, so I don't get any pressure on anything I say, really, because I'm just a nobody and I don't have any kind of powerful backing from anyone, just so you know. So, I'm just saying what I actually believe, because I don't have any of these pressures, at least not at this point in my career. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. So did Trump win his battle on the NFL? It seems to appear that he did, even though the Al Sharptons of the world are kind of fighting back, as we're going to get to. I'm going to give my take on all this, and I have the voice of reason of the day on this subject as well, and we'll talk about it. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
So I got a text that came in. You can text it 23680 that said, Michael, wow, guess you haven't gotten out much watching The Working World. Because I guess I said I haven't really seen that kind of stuff in my jobs. So maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I haven't. I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff in some of my jobs, but you have to remember, I grew up in a time where this wasn't as prevalent. You didn't get away with this kind of stuff.
You were a protected snowflake.
I don't know about that. I've seen some other things, especially when I worked at Checkers for 2 years. Checkers fast food. I saw some things, but not quite the Harvey Weinstein stuff. And actually, part of it is I had a lot of women bosses. Actually, some of my best bosses in my life have been women. So it's hard, if they're the boss, it's hard to say that stuff goes on. But very interesting. So Trump is making news on the NFL thing again, Tom Benson. This came out just in the last couple hours, I think. I don't know if you've heard this. So Trump was on with Hannity, and they released some of what he said. He says the NFL should have suspended him, talking about Colin Kaepernick. The NFL should have suspended him for one game, and he would have never done it again. They could have then suspended him for 2 games, and they could have suspended him again if he did it a third time for the season, and you would never had a problem. That might be true.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, but Trump is obviously not going to let this go right now.
Well,
it's a winning issue for him, really.
The NFL owners have a meeting this month coming up, and they think, from what I can tell, that a lot of NFL owners think that this anthem protest thing has run its course.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Well, Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, came out with a letter earlier this week, as many of you know. This is what he said. We live in a country that can feel very divided. Sports, and especially the NFL, brings people together and lets them set aside those divisions, at least for a few hours. The current dispute over the national anthem is threatening to erode the unifying power of our game and is now dividing us and our players from many fans across the country. It's an important moment in our game. We want to honor our flag and country, and our fans expect that of us. So Goodell came out and said they should stand for the flag. So, I mean, a lot of people don't like it, but Trump is really winning on this issue. But now the issue has taken another weird turn, especially when you have ESPN hosts like Jemele Hill, who called for boycotts until Jerry Jones, because of what Jerry Jones said. So Jerry Jones came out and said they're going to stand and they're going to respect the flag or they're not going to play.
This is the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
The owner of the Dallas Cowboys, who, have you ever been to that stadium in Dallas, by the way?
No, I have not.
It's like a city. It's gigantic. But that's a different story. But yeah, he came out, and this is what employers can do. It's part of what they can do. It doesn't mean that the players don't have leverage as well, because he needs good players to win to help his business grow. But employers can say, if you don't stand, you don't play.
There's a certain sense of decorum in any job that the boss has to enforce. Period.
But Jemele Hill, is called for a boycott of the NFL advertisers in a tweet. She got suspended by ESPN. And so now we have ESPN hosts and Al Sharpton comparing this all to slavery. Of course, we have to bring that back into this, even though it has nothing to do with this. In fact, here is Al Sharpton at a press conference this week saying that very thing about Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones' decision in many ways smacks of a plantation mentality. Let us not forget, Jerry Jones himself took a knee with members of the team. In essence, what Jerry Jones is saying is that you can bow if I tell you to bow. You can take a knee if I tell you to take a knee and take it with me. But if you want to do it on your own, then you'll be off the field.
So he says Jerry Jones has a plantation mentality. Michael Wilbon, who I actually like the show Pardon the Interruption. I haven't watched it in a long time. I just don't have the time. I used to watch it all the time. He said that Jerry Jones is like a slaveholder for what he did. So could you imagine his slave ancestors, over 100 years ago, if you could bring them to the future and hear him say that, could you imagine what they would say? How ridiculous that sounds?
Sure.
These players making millions of dollars, working their whole lives, training their whole lives to get there, who had free rides, a lot of them had free rides throughout college to get a college degree in education, and now they're getting paid millions of dollars. They sign contracts with the owners where they get money, but they also agree to play well. They do all this for playing a game. They're famous. And yet he says Jerry Jones is like a slaveholder because he's acting like a boss, telling them they need to respect the flag. This is how ridiculous all of this has become. And what's amazing about it to me is that I don't see how Michael Wilbon or Jameel Hill or Al Sharpton, and this is one of the issues I've had with all of this, how do you expect to get people on your side? Michael Wilbon, if you want people on your side to support what you're saying against Jerry Jones, why would you say something as ridiculous as he's like a slaveholder? Because immediately you're going to have most of the country just say, tune you out at that point. They're just going to say, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. Because it is stupid. They're not anywhere close to slaveholders. And it's just like any other job. There are certain things that I could not do that if I tweeted out certain things, I could get fired for it because I'm a public figure who represents this station. And if I said something really bad or outrageous on Twitter, they could fire me for it. That's what happens at ESPN. And what happens at the NFL. It doesn't mean I don't feel like I'm a slave because of that. And this actually goes beyond this whole issue. I've heard this kind of thing. There are some communist intellectuals out there who kind of throw this out there that we're all slaves to our employers, that we're all slaves to the corporations and corporate America, that's what the capitalist system does. It makes us slaves to the owners.
And being a slave to the state is okay.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Oh.
Well, yeah, the state has your best interest at heart.
Oh, of course they do. Yeah.
Yeah, but corporations, no, you're just a slave. Do you know you're just a slave to WFLA, Tom Benson?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just a slave here to News Radio 102.5. No, it's called a mutual agreement. I agree to work for them and do the job, and then they agree to pay me for it. It's a mutual agreement, just like with the players and the owner. The players have an agreement to work for them, to do the job, and the owner, as a part of the agreement, pays them a lot of money to do it. And if you do something to break that contract, you do something to break that contract, but it's a mutual thing. You're not being forced to play for the NFL. You're not being forced to work there. That's what slavery was. They were forced to do it outside of their own will. No, they're not being forced to do it. There's a mutual agreement. And to act like the players have no power either, of course the players have power in this agreement. The owner doesn't just control everything. The owner does have a lot of control because, well, he's the boss. He's the owner. But he needs good players so his team can be successful and win and make him money. So the players have leverage too. It's not like it's just all one-sided here. But to act like, to me, it's an insult to history. It's an insult to our intelligence, insult to his ancestors. So, but that's where we are. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Daniel in Orlando. Daniel, what do you think about this?
Hey, well, okay, so this is my first time calling, so if I sound a little nervous, I'm sorry about that.
No worries. I'm glad you're calling.
Well, so, you know, I was listening to, God, I forgot who it was. Somebody had on Van Jones, and, you know, he had the whole white lash meltdown, and he was kind of repeating that point. Well, maybe we should actually start using his own points against him of, you know, being like, oh, well, you know, you're a slave to the corporations, because that sounds so idiotic, but a lot of people really believe that. But, you know, I think once people actually hear it, like, said out loud and, like, you know, compared to that, they realize how stupid it sounds, you know? It's like,
I hope so.
Well, let's turn their own tactics against them and make fun of them for just being not as intellectually
well, I mean, yeah, it's funny.
You know, like to.
It's funny, you know, how they talk about you're slaves to corporate America, but they don't mind making a ton of money from corporate America. Michael Wilbon does. Van Jones does. So
yeah, because literally when I heard him have that whole meltdown, my first thought was, oh, did your corporate masters tell you to say that? You know, like it sounds so stupid. Because
it is stupid. We're yeah. I appreciate your call, Daniel. You did well for your first time, so you have to call back again another time. I appreciate it.
Yaffee. By the way, is it true that you're actually a millennial? Because I'm like 27 too, so I think that's cool.
I am 31.
Oh, well, awesome.
So I am.
Brother.
You and I are kind of. Especially we're on the older side of the millennial, but yeah, we're millennials.
Awesome. All right, man. Keep up the good fight.
All right, thank you. I got a millennial listening. Makes me very happy. So, but yeah, I agree with him. And the other thing I said, and I said this on the morning show, is Michael Wilbon, I'm sure he has producers under him. I'm sure he has employees under him. When he tells his employees or producers or interns what to do, is he a plantation owner who tells them what to do, forces them to do certain works? No. The whole thing is ridiculous. And there's actually, you know, I know even a lot of blacks will see it and they're like, okay, we're not slaves. This is dumb. Come on now. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I'm going to play my voice of reason of the day on this issue. And we have a lot more to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Yes, welcome back to the show. We have a caller on the line, so let's take it. Let's go to Karen in Orlando. Karen, how are you tonight?
I'm great. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Just glad you called.
Yeah. I listen to you all the time.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate your points of view. The one thing I want to bring up about the NFL is the trickle-down effect to all the workers in these stadiums that are mostly minimum wage workers. I mean, who knows if they make $10 an hour or whatever. But these people are the ones that are going to suffer the most because if fans don't go, if the players keep up their antics, then these people won't have jobs. And a lot of them depend on that income.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the NFL has created a lot of jobs for a lot of people. Even beyond the stadiums, you know, you have sports bars that make a lot of money on Sundays and merchandise, all that kind of stuff.
People just won't, you know, they won't survive it because they do depend on that income. And the holidays are coming. My heart just goes out to them because they're the real victims here of the whole thing. And that's all I want to offer is that I've, you know, worked those kind of jobs as you have, and it's not easy to be on your feet and you know, catering to people, and it's not easy.
Right.
And so I hope that people think about that as well. Not so much the fans, but the owners, and how they plan on helping these people to stay afloat in this storm that they're having.
Yeah, I think the best way really is they just got to stop politicizing sports, because I think that's what most people have a problem with.
Well, they've shot themselves in the foot, and no matter what the commissioner says, no matter what Jerry Jones says, no matter what, it's ruined now, and they're going to have to really come back, and they're going to have to gain the public trust again, because a lot of people just said forget it.
Right.
And, and we're paying. It's a double dip system. I mean, we're paid for their stadiums through taxpayer dollars, and then they have the
which
nerve
I've been
to turn
against.
I've been against it too.
I can't stand that.
And then they have the nerve to charge. What family can go to these things? I mean, you have to have money to go.
Yeah.
And so it's double dipping on us, and that's really ignorant. And I don't know. There's more to it all. It's controlled by power and money, and money's not evil. It's what you do with it, and I'll leave it there.
All right, Karen. Appreciate your call.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Oh,
Bye.
Thank you. She talks about funding for stadiums. Even Trump brought that up. They're getting all these tax breaks and subsidies. I mean, even in Florida that happens. These stadiums, the cities, state, they put in a ton of money to put these stadiums, which I've been against. I mean, the NFL makes millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. And they're very protective of their brands and their trademarks and everything.
Yeah, I know. So the fact that they need any kind of government help to build this stuff, I mean, no, I hate that. It's not the government's role. You know what else annoys me, though, about these stadiums that no one ever brings up, but really bothers me? There's never enough parking. Why is that? Have you noticed that? Like, any kind of big sports venue, they never have enough parking. They never build enough parking and parking structures around where you have to do that. To go to a Bucks game, I would have to park down the street in some offhanded parking lot and walk a mile or something. And all of them are like that. Even the one in Dallas, the huge stadium, but they don't build parking garages. They don't build parking lots. That always bothered me. I know that's like totally off topic, but it just drives me crazy that they build these huge stadiums that fits thousands of people, and they never have enough parking for everyone. All right, I have to get into some of Trump's comments on the media. Some of you are going to disagree with what I have to say about it, but hey, I'm the voice of reason, so that's just what it is. We'll get to the voice of reason of the day later in the show as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
That nothing comes from indifference. I look inside.
So NBC News put out a story, and they said that Trump had called for a 10-fold increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal. President Trump tweeted this out today in response. He says, fake NBC News made up a story that I wanted a 10-fold increase in our U.S. nuclear arsenal. Pure fiction made up to demean NBC equals CNN. Now, others have said it's fake as well. General Mattis came out today and said it was irresponsible that they came out with that story because it was not true. But this is what really got a lot of attention today that President Trump tweeted out right after. He said this. He says, with all of the fake news coming out of NBC and the networks, at what point is it appropriate to challenge their license? Then he said, bad for country. Is this a good thing to be saying as President of the United States? This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. You can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We are on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, or you can send me a friend request on Facebook, and I will accept it. And we have Mr. Tom Benson, who is producing as well. Did you hear these comments from Trump earlier?
I have, and, it's Trump being Trump, a lot of bluster. There's no way he can challenge. First of all, the networks are not licensed. Now, they own TV stations in markets that have licenses, but the networks themselves do not have licenses.
Yeah, and you're like an expert radio guy.
Well, I don't know about that.
You got like inside sources in radio and media. You have a website out there. We should promote your website more on this show.
That's all right.
Well, what's the website?
MediaConfidential.blogspot.com.
Yeah, it has all kinds of insider talk on what's going on in the media. So, but yeah, that's very true. They don't have licenses. You're right.
I think he was
local stations.
He was just running something up the flagpole to see who would salute.
Oh, of course.
And just to intimidate the networks.
Now, and Trump was in a press conference with the Canadian Prime Minister today, and he continued on talking about this. Here's the audio of that, if you could play it for me, Tom Benson.
No, I never discussed increasing it. I want it in perfect shape. That was just fake news by NBC, which gives a lot of fake news lately. And it's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write. And people should look into it.
So this actually goes off something he said, I believe last week, or was earlier this week or over the weekend. He tweeted this out. He said, late night hosts are dealing with the Democrats for their very unfunny and repetitive material. Always anti-Trump. Should we get equal time? He tweeted out this as well. More and more people are suggesting that Republicans and me should be given equal time on TV when you look at the one-sided coverage. The grammar was a little off there, but so he's saying because, and I blasted what these comedians have done on late night television more because I don't get. I get why they're doing it. The ratings seem to be good right now for doing that, but it just bothers me that that's not why you watch a show like that. And then you get it, it's all politicized, all bashing Trump. Why you would do that, why you would alienate half your potential audience doesn't make sense to me. But go ahead, Tom Benson. You're chomping at the bit in there.
No, I was just going to, excuse me. You're right from the standpoint of people don't watch those shows for it to be politicized.
Yeah.
Except for the choir, the people that want to hear that kind of stuff all the time.
And I guess it's working for him now,
and as long as that holds up and the ratings are, okay, they'll do it. Otherwise, it will run its course and they'll cycle out of it. All I can say is somebody like Johnny Carson is spinning in his grave as we talk.
Yeah, I wonder what Leno thinks about all this because he's out of it now, and I wonder if he just gets...
I did hear a quote from him a few months ago where he said he was glad that Trump was not president during his reign on The Tonight Show because he doesn't have to deal with it.
Oh, interesting. Huh. I did not see that quote. But here's my point on this with this whole equal time, with this whole threatening to pull licenses, with this whole, going after these media outlets. Our visceral reaction as conservatives is, yes, it's about time. Going after the leftist media and their bias. And I'm all for exposing the bias of some of these media outlets. In fact, James O'Keefe from Project Veritas put out a video earlier this week from a New York Times audience editor who was basically admitting their bias, basically admitting how anti-Trump they are, basically going after it and everything.
And I'm surprised that's not getting play anywhere.
Well, this is a little bit of a side, but here's the problem with some of O'Keefe's stuff other than, he's going after the mainstream outlets, so they're not going to want to run it.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to get people up more in the business. Nobody knows what an audience editor is. That's not someone who is this high up. Mm-hmm. If he could really get someone higher up. Now, when he got Van Jones, when he was, kind of going through CNN video and there was some Van Jones video, that was a big deal and that got some play. But it's a big deal. I still think it's a big deal. It's a big story. But he's got to get people higher up to really break through. And sometimes he gets people a little bit lower on the food chain.
We want names of people we know.
And I think that's a little bit of a problem, other than the fact that, he's a conservative attacking liberal media. But, our visceral reaction is to agree with Trump. Yeah, we need equal time. But I want to throw this out to you. Devil's advocate a little bit here. Imagine if President Obama was still president. And imagine when he was president if he said this: these conservative talk radio hosts are constantly going after me. Should we demand equal time? Should we pull their licenses? Imagine if Obama had said that about conservative talk radio and some conservative media outlets out there during his presidency. Could you, the blowback from us as conservatives would be immense. We would say he's attacking the First Amendment. He doesn't understand that there is, fairness. It's just this is what people want to listen to. And so aren't we being a little hypocritical then if we support Trump in this? There was a lot of talk and a lot of fear that the Democrats under Obama were going to really try to push the fairness doctrine on conservative talk radio, which would have killed conservative talk radio. We're going to go to our radio expert here in the control room who's been in the business forever. The fairness doctrine, how did that work?
Well, supposedly you had to give time for opposing views, regardless of what you were talking about, unless it was in a bona fide newscast. You weren't necessarily have to. But, for all intents and purposes, you do want to give both sides in a news story just so people can make up their own minds, I would think, But on a show like this, where you're giving your opinion, it would almost be impossible. It would just completely interrupt the show. Well, back in the day when there were only 3 TV networks and maybe PBS, the number of outlets where you can get information one side or the other was very, very limited.
Yeah.
But now you got 200 channels on cable.
Yep.
You have the internet. The playing field has changed.
Yeah, there's no need for this talk of equal time because, even with the complaints about what NBC News did and what CNN does, Fox News still kills them in the rating.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't argue that they're not getting some attention out there. But I just want to warn people and caution people, be careful what you wish for. What you wish for here. Because you now have the President of the United States. And this is not something the president should be getting involved in. We talk about the role of the president. I'm someone who is a believer in limited government. And I don't believe the president should be doing this in a role. But you have the President of the United States threatening licenses of media outlets, threatening to force equal time on media outlets because he disagrees with their speech. He disagrees with their coverage. And I disagree with a lot of it too. But once you start that precedent of the president going after that and the government going after these outlets because of what they're saying, where does it end? Where does it lead? And where does it end? Because eventually they're going to want to go after Fox News. Eventually they're going to want to go after the internet. Eventually they're going to want to go after different things on social media. And eventually they're going to want to go after conservative talk radio.
Well, they already have. Look what happened to O'Reilly. Look what happened to a couple other hosts that have been targeted.
True, but that's not at a government level.
No, not at the government level. But there's been a lot of advertiser boycotting going on.
Yeah, and we've talked about that on this show immensely, how crazy that is. I hate that. I don't like going after things because you merely disagree with their speech. That's the time we live on. You have Antifa that literally creates violence because they disagree with someone's speech.
I was going to say, let the marketplace decide. And if you do look at the ratings, the marketplace does decide who's the winner and who the also-rans are. In cable TV news, the winner is Fox News. The also-rans are MSNBC, CNN, and whatever else is out there.
Yeah, well, exactly. And as conservatives, we usually believe in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. We usually believe in free enterprise and competition and capitalism. And that's a great example of how we should do that. In talk radio, people say, well, conservative views dominate talk radio. Yes and no, because there's also NPR. And NPR is pretty popular too, and NPR is everywhere.
You want to know why conservative talk radio does well? It makes money.
Exactly.
And it makes money because it has listeners. When they've had liberal talk networks out there, they have not succeeded because
they've tried.
They're not entertaining, and B, they just don't pull in listeners.
Yeah, and they've tried to do that. I mean, we have a liberal talk radio host, and Jim Phillips locally,
right,
who was very successful for years. So it's not always the case. But you're exactly right. There is something that works, and it's the free enterprise system, and it's giving the audience what they want. In radio, it's conservatism, and if the audience continues to watch these late night hosts bashing Trump, well, that's just the way it is. Now, when the audience drops and their ratings fall, they'll have to change a little bit, although they're not going to want to change.
Well, they'll move on to other subjects, that's for sure. They'll watch the news cycle, and if they can go into something else, they can. But right now,
but this is
Trump is the punching bag.
Yeah, and I don't think Trump would ever actually do anything here. I don't think Trump has any plans to force it. I don't think Trump really cares about that. I think Trump is reactionary like he always is, and he wants to punch back. And just by throwing it out there, he knows that he will get support from his base, and he knows it will help him politically. But I don't think he's actually going to force the issue.
That's right.
But that being said, I just want to point out to some people, put the shoe on the other foot here. If it was Obama saying the same thing about conservative talk radio, we would all be very upset. We have to be consistent, and we can't go down this road of the president of the United States wanting to pull licenses, wanting to force equal time because he disagrees with the speech. I think that in the big picture of things, that creates a lot of problems. Do you agree or disagree, though? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We have Mr. Tom Benson producing as well. We are on until 10 p.m. if you're listening to the live show. If you missed any of the show, though, do not worry, because I will post the podcast of the show, and it will be available anywhere that podcasts are available: iHeartRadio, iTunes, and the Beyond Reason Radio app, which you can get the Google Play or Apple App Store. So, the Boy Scouts are making some news today, and they've caved into the pressure of political correctness in today's world. Here is the report from Fox News Radio.
The Boy Scouts announce girls can join, from Cub Scouts starting next year, then all the way up to Eagle Scout through the Boy Scout program. It won't be completely co-ed. Cub Scout dens will be boy or girl only, with the kids coming together in scout packs. Those packs can be just boys, just girls, or both. And there are plans to have the program for older girls in place in 2019. Chris Foster, Fox News.
Yep. The Boy Scouts is now allowing girls. Here's my question. What do we call them now?
Scouts.
Do we just say Scouts?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess for Cub Scouts, you could just still call them, but Boy Scouts,
I got to think the Girl Scouts organizations are not happy, though.
Yeah, I was trying to find, I thought I had heard somewhere that the Girl Scouts were not happy about this, but I can't seem to find any information on that. Apparently, they've been open to it in the past. But yeah, the boy, there's a great meme that's going around, and it says, someone says, "Who says that girls can't be in the Boy Scouts?" And the response is, "It's in the name, Boy Scouts." That's what says it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to wonder what are the main reasons for doing this. They say, it's giving them the opportunity. It can teach both genders different things. I really think this is all a part of that whole plan to make it seem like boys and girls are the same, that they can do the same things, that any kind of differences is really just a societal construct forced on them. And it's the whole transgender thing as well. So instead of having to really deal with the transgender issue, it's like, well, gender, sex, it's interchangeable. You can decide whatever you want to do. If you're a boy, you can say you're a girl. But there's really no difference anyways, apparently. So we're just going to allow everyone in and make everyone happy. And, of course, the whole thing is ridiculous. Because there is a difference between the two. Anyone who has lived in the world with other people who has had, you don't even have to have had a girlfriend. If you've had a mom or a sister, you know that there's a difference between a girl, between your mom and your dad, between your sister and your brother. There just is. It's common sense. But, it's interesting because there's a lot of people who say, no, oh, that's sexist. But I found a story here, and it's from CNN of all places. And I just happened to stumble upon this randomly today. It's not related to the Boy Scouts thing in any way, except this is the headline. Men's and women's brains react differently when helping others, study says. Well, I thought there really was no difference. I thought they were all the same.
Mm-hmm.
No, not according to this study. There is pleasure in both giving and receiving. Does gender influence which of these pleasures we prefer, is what the story says. In women, part of the brain showed a greater response when sharing money, while in men, the same structure showed more activity when they kept the cash for themselves. A small study published Monday in Nature Human Behavior found. Women tend to be more altruistic than men, previous studies have shown. So what is this saying? Men are cheap and women are more generous. We know this. We all know this. That's why in a lot of sitcoms you have the dad who's the cheap one, who's making sure everyone keeps the money, and you have the mom who's often more generous, often more caring, often more altruistic, because we know this. We instinctively know there is a difference between men and women. But what this study is showing is that it goes beyond society forcing it on you. This is literally saying that it comes from a difference in the brain. And, you keep pointing this out, that just because there's a difference doesn't mean one is worse than the other. We're not saying women are inferior than men, and that's why they can't join the Boy Scouts. We're not saying, one's better than the other. They're just different, but the difference is good. It's a good thing, but there is a difference. Not only that, but you have all these problems with, sexual assault and everything that we were talking about Harvey Weinstein earlier. Mm-hmm. And then you have all these stories of teachers sexually assaulting their students and all this stuff. Is this really going to make any of that better by mixing the two genders in the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts? Is this really going to help that situation, or is it going to make it a lot worse?
I don't know if it's going to make it a lot worse. It's going to make it another avenue for abuse, for something to happen.
Of course it is. So according to the study, it says women put more subjective value on pro-social behavior and men find selfish behavior more valuable. You know who made these similar points? The guy who was basically run out of Google for making a memo about this. That guy was called a sexist and everything else because he said there's a reason why there's some gaps between men and women in the STEM field. And he pointed out stuff like this, and he was called all kinds of things like sexist and bigoted. And now you have a story here from legitimate studies, and it's on CNN Health of all places, admitting basically the same thing that guy admitted. And that we all know that there's a difference between men and women, that there's a difference in the brain between men and women, that there is a reason why you separate the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. There's just how is it?
There's even instances in life where you separate the boys from the men.
Yeah, that's very true as well. That's why it's called Boy Scouts, not Men Scouts.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just sometimes I look at stories, and the whole gender thing is really something I just can't believe I talk about in today's world. I can't believe what we have to talk about in today's world. It's one of those things that's so beyond reason. I'm just like, I can't believe this is an issue. I can't believe I'm living in a world today where the Boy Scouts, where in the name it's boy, is saying, oh, we're going to let girls in now. And we're all just like, oh, okay. No. It's a problem. And studies show there's a difference. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I never did get to play my voice of reason of the day. I have a great voice of reason on the whole NFL protest versus Trump and everything. And I'm going to play that. So we're going to play that in the next segment as well. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight. We have covered a lot of different things in the show. In the first hour of the show, we talked a little bit about the controversy in the NFL between Trump and, the kneeling players. And it seems like Trump has actually won that issue for the most part. Roger Goodell came out and said he wants the players to stand. Jerry Jones came out and said he wants the players to stand. And I usually play a voice of reason that I find somewhere in the media world every day. And I haven't got a chance to play this yet. I was going to play it early, but we ran out of time. We took a call. So I wanted to play this because I thought his take was really good on this whole issue. His name is Lawrence Jones. He apparently has a show on The Blaze. I have not had a chance to really listen to his radio show or anything on The Blaze. I see him. He's on Fox News a bunch. He's a contributor every now and then for them and comments on things. He was on earlier tonight. Actually, I've seen him. I've watched some videos of him and read some stuff from him online. But I just happened to stumble upon this. And he's a young black guy. He's younger than me. And he was talking about this whole national anthem issue. And I thought he gave a really good perspective on it. So I wanted to play. This is the voice of the reason of the day of the show, Lawrence Jones, on the NFL players kneeling for the national anthem.
I can't help but think about this whole national anthem kneeling debate. This entire thing is rooted in virtue signaling with tunnel vision, and it's happening on both sides. Both sides do it. One virtue, look out for the marginalized and the powerless. No doubt this is important. The other virtue, we must honor and respect those that lay down their lives for that experiment that we call America. Guess what, y'all? This is not an either-or proposition. Both virtues matter. The flag, the anthem, is all about an ideal. Look, America has its problems, but it's no doubt the greatest country in the world. I think about being a Christian. It's tough, and I screw up a lot because I'm human. I know I can never be perfect, but I can do my best to try to be perfect. And you know what? That's all that God asked for. And that's the ideal of America. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying to be perfect. Look, if I was to kneel about everything that ticks me off in this country, you know what? I would be kneeling all day. Every day. But make no mistake, the good outweighs the bad. Those two virtues that I talk about, the national anthem represents both of them. But here's the deal. Don't pretend like police brutality doesn't exist. It does, and we gotta call it out when we see it. There's a serious disconnect between the police and my community, and I can't pretend like some cases don't give me pause. But don't pretend like all cops are corrupt. Suggesting anything like that is just simply being intellectually dishonest. Colin Kaepernick made this mistake from the very beginning. He says he's taking a knee to shine a light on police brutality. Then he goes and wears socks that depict cops as pigs. That's not only unacceptable, but it's that sort of behavior that prevents productive dialogue. And it discredits his side of the argument. When I think about the national anthem, I think about the best performers of all time. It's Super Bowl 25 in Tampa, Florida. It's January 27th, 1991. It's been 10 days since the U.S. entered the Gulf War. I wasn't even born yet, but this performance still means something today. Her rendition of the national anthem was #1 on the radio charts twice. The first time was right after this performance, and the second time was right after 9/11. The song didn't just soothe the pain of the country. It brought us together. It unified all Americans. The problem that both sides see when one chooses to stand for the national anthem or kneel for the national anthem, those problems existed during this performance by Whitney Houston. See, we can be woke to the injustices in our country, but let's not be so woke that we miss out on the true meaning of our national anthem.
And I thought he made a really good point there that, you know, there are definitely issues in this country that you have to deal with, but there are good ways to deal with it and there are bad ways to deal with it. When you're kneeling for the national anthem, or you're sitting for the national anthem, you're stretching for the national anthem, that's directed more towards the country and more towards the traditions that people in this country cherish. And I hear the argument that, well, his kneeling has nothing to do with the anthem or the flag. Well, then why do you do it during the anthem when the flag is displayed if it has nothing to do with it? That doesn't make sense. I think to Kaepernick, it does have something to do with it. And we played his comments on this show before where he talked about how it is. He feels like this country, too many minorities are oppressed in this country. Those were his words. So it does to him have to deal with not the flag itself or the anthem itself, but what though the anthem and the flag symbolize, and the anthem and the flag symbolize the country and the goodness of the country and the ideal of the country. And to say that, well, we have to kneel because we're not living up to those ideals, I think for the most part we are living up to those ideals. And that's what really offends a lot of people. Not that, you know, it's disrespectful to the flag itself, but what the flag and the anthem represent. And I thought his points were well. You know, Stephen Moore, who we've interviewed on the show before, had a piece as well. He had a column as well on this. And he made some good points. I don't want to read the whole thing, but he talks about how even sports journalists have gone all political, which is something we've talked about. You know, people don't want to. You know, my brother is much more into sports than I am. Always has been. A huge sports fan. Always listens to sports talk radio and everything else. He told me, like, ESPN, he says he can't listen to it anymore because that's all they're talking about. All they're talking about is Kaepernick and the national anthem thing and politics. And he's like, that's not why I listen to sports radio. And he ends up going to Fox Sports, which he says is not as bad about it. So Fox Sports is really taking this opportunity, I think. They know. I guarantee you the exec at Fox Sports is like, don't make things too political because it's hurting them. We have an opportunity here. But there's so many people out there like that. And, you know, Stephen Moore in his piece kind of says the same thing. He says this. He says, you know, he was talking about all these writers politicizing sports. He says, what does any of this have to do with sports, for goodness sakes? These opinions belong on the op-ed page, not the sports page. He says, this is the ruination of sports entertainment. Sports offer an escape, a respite from the politics and problems of the world. I think I speak for millions of sports fans. I don't want to turn to the sports page and get lectured about race relations. And I don't care about Brittany Griner's sexual orientation or with whom she's sleeping. I just want to find out if the Cubs won last night. I guess that makes me a bigot, is what Stephen Moore said. He says if Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and NFL linebackers want to protest what an unjust and sexist society America is, they have every right to go in the public square and express themselves until the cows come home. All we can do as fans is exercise our freedom to turn them off, as millions of Americans are doing. After 40 years, I finally canceled my subscription to Sports Illustrated. Stephen Moore saying that here. I mean, who has subscriptions to magazines anymore? I mean, you should have canceled that a long time ago anyways there, Stephen Moore. It's you don't get magazines in the mail anymore. This is 2017. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, but you get the magazine so you get access to the website.
Oh, is that what it is?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know they have like, I forget what it's called. There's some kind of app where you pay monthly and you get access to like hundreds of magazines online. Sure.
Yeah.
And you pay a monthly subscription for like all of them.
I can't read more than 2 anyway. Why would I want to access 100?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends who you are, but I mean, I haven't had a magazine delivered to my house in, in years. He ends with this. So he says, if someone starts a politics-free sports magazine that entertains and informs us about, well, sports, it will make millions of dollars. Yeah, I think it would. I think his points are, I mean, this is what I said from the beginning. The biggest complaint really isn't even, I mean, people definitely don't like what Kaepernick and the players are doing because they don't see the country as unjust. They don't see the country as oppressing people. They don't see the country as racist or sexist. So when someone's kneeling during the national anthem, making a point that, well, I'm doing this because this country oppresses too many people, and you have a lot of people that, one, don't see that. But the other thing is they don't want to deal with that during a game. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be an escape. People want to talk about the sport. And there's a lot of people out there like Stephen Moore. So good points by a couple of voices of reason there. So I will end the show. I have not forgotten. I will end the show with things that made Yaffee laughy. Yes, the best part of the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Okay, so I know I promised something that makes Yaffee laughy. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I do have to complain about one more thing. One more thing, Tom Benson.
Uh-oh.
That really upsets me.
You're like,
and I don't like.
You're like Columbo. Oh, one more thing. Where were you? No, go ahead.
Columbo reference and Beyond Reason. All right, I understand. I found this from the conservativereview.com, something I talk about a lot. Under GOP in 2017, the government spending has increased $130 billion. This is from Daniel Horowitz in Conservative Review. He says, it's getting old. Republicans run for office on the promise to cut spending, and then at every opportunity, they actually increase spending. According to new estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, the fiscal deficit for 2017, which just ended, was $668 billion. That is $82 billion greater than the fiscal 2016 deficit when Obama was in office. Now, with control of all three branches for the last 3 quarters of 2017, Republicans have increased spending. We vote for these people to do the opposite, and they keep increasing it. The Republican Party seems to be just as bad as the Democrats here. They first passed not one, but 2 Democrats' budget this year in April and September. Then they blew through the stop sign of the debt ceiling and raised it unconditionally until December. Not that anything will change in December. I mean, nobody believes it at this point that anything's going to change, do they? Of course not. It says, in fact, the fiscal outcome of the first year the GOP controlled all of government is even worse than the top-line CBO numbers suggest. The debt ceiling did temporarily put the brakes on creating more debt and force the Treasury to shift certain payments into the new fiscal year. If not for the shift of certain payments from October to September in both 2016 and 2017, the deficit would have increased by $121 billion in 2017. It's interesting. I thought if you didn't increase the debt ceiling, we would go in default and all that. No, they can shift payments, which they did. Very interesting. It's not talked about enough. Which means, he continues on, which means that unless Republicans start acting like Republicans, I think those days are long gone, the fiscal year 2018 deficit will be even worse. Do we have a revenue problem, he asks? No. As the CBO points out, we've taken in record revenue, thanks in part to a recovering job market. Receipts totaled $3.314 trillion in the fiscal year 2017, $47 billion more than in 2016. Thus, all the deficit problems were on the spending side of the ledger, which was $130 billion more than last year, totaling almost $4 trillion. Excuse me. And it was not a problem of increased spending. Expenditures for the Department of Defense rose by just 1%. Most of it is on The other side, they are, the Democrats always say it's defense spending, but it seems you're raising on the other side. He says the single biggest increase was from the Department of Education. Spending rose by $35 billion, a whopping 45% increase from last year. Most of that was from increases in student loan subsidies. Hence, much like with healthcare, the federal government distorts the market, creates an asset bubble for the higher education cartel, which raises prices and in turn requires an infinite amount of subsidies. He goes on with a bunch of different things, but it just shows exactly what the problem is. Government's too involved in these things, and the Republicans are too afraid to actually do what they were elected to do and cut spending. Unfortunately, this is not something I think Trump's really big on, cutting spending, although his budget that he proposed was pretty good, but it's never going to pass, I guess. The Department of Education should be abolished. We don't even need it on the federal level, and that's where most of the increases are coming from. And it's ruined the price of college education as well. Just crazy. All right, I got that off my chest, Tom Benton. I feel better. There we go. Had to complain about that. Let's have a little fun. It is that time of the show once again. Yes, it is time for things that made Yaffee laughy. So there's a solution. Earlier this week was Columbus Day, if we can say that now. Can I say that? Can I say Columbus Day? Is that okay? Is that okay to say?
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to keep my job here?
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. I mean, we have to call it Indigenous Peoples Day now or whatever.
Might be a suspension coming up.
Oh, yeah. So I actually wrote a blog on Columbus Day, a Voice of Reason on Columbus Day. You can find it on the website, 1025wfla.com. It's also on the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. But I found this from the Babylon Bee. We all know what the Babylon Bee is. Here's the headline. Police keep Antifa away from Columbus statues by taping job applications onto them. Antifa factions nationwide had planned to deface Columbus Day, on which they intend to deface and destroy statues of Christopher Columbus Monday. But authorities in many cities got the better of the radical far-left groups with a brilliant idea. By adhering legitimate job applications all over the local Columbus statues, they virtually guaranteed that Antifa groups would not approach them. It's working extremely well so far. These Antifa thugs won't go anywhere near an opportunity for gainful employment, according to Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck. We urge other American cities, if you want to protect your statues of Columbus, just head to the nearest McDonald's or Walmart and ask for a stack of job applications. Get some tape and stick them all over the statue, and you could pretty much just go about your day at that point. Job applications are Antifa's kryptonite. Okay, obviously this is, if you don't know, the Babylon Bee is like The Onion. It's a fake news. It's a satirical news site. These aren't real stories. It's not a real thing, but it's just a joke. But, I think they were on to something.
I think so.
I think they should. I think we should actually try this.
Years ago, when my kids were growing up, on Easter, we would have the Easter egg hunt, and I always had an Easter egg that was worth a certain amount of money. And if whoever found the egg would get the money.
Yeah.
So the first year, I put it in a place where I know they would never, ever find it. And that was my son's book bag.
That was not nice. Oh, that's good, though. That's clever. So, yeah, just put some job applications on. I mean, I do wonder if they have jobs. I mean, how do they have the time for all this? When all the protesting and violence in the streets, and I've actually always kind of wondered that. But there you go. I actually wrote a blog today, I said earlier, about Columbus, where I talked about how the whole thing is ridiculous. Obviously, Columbus was not a perfect man, but you know what? Neither were the Native Americans. the Native Americans were not perfect either. Slavery, racism, greed, hatred existed in the Native American tribes too. It's not a problem only Western civilization had. It's a problem that all of human civilization has. So, but we can still remember Columbus because his accomplishments are worthy of praise, and Western civilization has brought some good things to the Americas that are worthy of praise as well. All right. So check out that blog. I wrote it. It's on Facebook. And, well, that's the end of the show. Hope you all had a good show. If you missed any of the show, make sure you catch out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. I will be back on tomorrow night, 8 to 10 p.m. same time. You don't want to miss it. And, well, I'll catch you guys then.
That nothing comes from indifference. I look inside.